Welcome to the Confidently Balance Your Hormones podcast. My name is Davidson, and I'm a hormone health expert, master mindset coach, and multiple wellness business entrepreneur. I'm obsessed with helping you experience hormone balance, confidence, self-love, and live a life full of joy. I know we're about to have so much fun together, so thank you so much for pushing play today. And now let's begin. Welcome to the Confidently Balance Your Hormones podcast. This is your guide, D. Davidson. Today, I'm going to introduce you to Julie Lipset. Did I say your last name correctly?
Yeah.
She is a licensed mental health counselor and certified fertility awareness educator based in Massachusetts. Julie has her own practice working with therapy clients struggling with depression, anxiety, and trauma. As a fertility awareness educator, she teaches people how to read their fertile signs in order to prevent pregnancy naturally, optimize their chances of a mindful conception, navigate cycle health concerns, and connect more deeply with their bodies. Julie became a certified fertility awareness educator after completing the Wells School of Body Literacy's 2-year teacher education program. She loves supporting people to feel more at home in their bodies, more in tune with their natural rhythms, and more empowered to love and advocate for themselves. Outside of work, Julie enjoys hiking in the White Mountains, practicing aerial yoga. That sounds fun. Exploring Boston's Metro West, cooking, spending time with her husband and 2 dogs. Welcome, Julie.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So before we get into the really deep stuff around fertility and our cycles and all that good stuff, do you want to share anything else about yourself that we didn't cover in your intro?
You kind of got it all. I mean, I'm just excited to be here. Thanks so much for having me. And yeah, I just feel super passionate about this work, and I'm really excited to have a chance to share it with all of your listeners.
Awesome. Well, what is the fertility awareness method? I'm curious.
Sure, yeah. So the fertility awareness method is a really in-depth method of tracking your cycle. There's a whole bunch of different methods. The method that I use is called a symptothermal method. So that means that like the sympto part of it is cervical fluid, which is fluid that's produced in your cervix, and you might see it at your vulva, you might feel it at your vulva, you might see it on the toilet paper or in your underwear. And this just indicates that you have estrogen in your body, that you're fertile. It's what can keep sperm alive. It's what, it's kind of a byproduct of, or a product of the same mechanisms that are building up our uterine linings, getting our eggs ripe and ready to ovulate. And then the thermal part is our basal body temperature. So we're tracking kind of like our temperature upon waking in the morning to see how that shifts throughout our cycle, because depending on what hormones are dominant in any given phase of your cycle, it might be lowered or it might be raised. So it's really simple, or similar to taking charge of your fertility, what I teach, if the book, if anyone's heard of that. It's just a little more kind of, it's taught by an instructor. It's a little more based on kind of combining your intuition with this information that you have about your cycle, this data, this objective data.
That's amazing. So I'm sure someone listening might be wondering, how do you help them track this? Is it on a spreadsheet? Do they have something they print out and write out? How are they actually doing this?
Yeah, so there is a cycle chart template that I can send people I'm working with if they want to chart it on paper. There's also an app called the Read Your Body app that they're really wonderful about data privacy and self-interpretation. There's a lot of cycle charting apps out there that will do the interpretation for you. But I'm teaching people how to interpret it themselves and to use it for whatever they're looking to use it for, based on their own knowledge of how to interpret this information.
Okay. And
I didn't mention this, but this can be used to avoid pregnancy naturally. So I have people who want to come off hormonal birth control or who want to have a natural contraceptive method. It could be used for people who want to optimize their chances of conceiving in any particular cycle. It can also be used to just navigate health concerns. So if you're going through some kind of transition like perimenopause or postpartum, it can just help you kind of stay grounded through those phases of your life and know what's going on. And of course, like any concerns with your cycle health, like long cycles or regular cycles. It can just help you know what's going on in between your periods.
That was going to be my next question is how
Okay.
can people utilize
Yeah.
the charting because some people just think the charting is just if they're trying to conceive, but you and I had discussed it can be so much more even when it comes to work and productivity. And I work with a lot of entrepreneurial women. If you really know what's going on in your cycle, it can give you some insight on where your energy level is going to be, right?
Yeah.
What you should
Yeah.
be working on. So it's a pretty amazing tool once someone taps into that.
Absolutely.
Such an interesting topic. How did you even end up becoming a fertility awareness educator?
I've always had irregular cycles. I think most of us come to this work because we have some kind of personal connection to it. So I've always had irregular cycles. I was never sure kind of what my body was doing, why my periods were so far apart. I wasn't really getting answers from my doctor. And so I found cycle tracking and fertility awareness, and I just tried it. I just got a basal body thermometer just to see, like, okay, am I even ovulating? Like, what's going on here? And the first time I saw my temp rise, your temp will rise after ovulation. And the first time
Hmm.
I saw that happen, it was just like the most incredible feeling because coming from years and years of thinking, oh my gosh, my body's broken or it's not doing something right, then to see this data on my chart
Hmm.
that was proving to me that my body is doing what it's supposed to be doing and what like all the online resources said it would do was really, really cool and really empowering. And from there, I just needed more because that, I mean, I really think that moment was one of those moments where you look back on your life and that changed my
Hmm.
perspective
Hmm.
on my body and on myself from I'm broken to like maybe I am doing, like, you know, maybe I'm not broken. Maybe things are doing what they're supposed to be doing, even if it's just in their own time. And so, yeah, I just couldn't get enough from books and Facebook groups and online resources. So I dove into the teacher training program that I just completed in December.
Amazing. And what an empowering thing. I think,
Yeah.
when you're talking about it, I can feel and hear your passion, but also you were empowered to know what was going on with your body and confident, in the process. I have a lot of
Yeah.
women, especially young women, who they might not even be with a partner or
Mhm.
be worried about pregnancy or anything like that, but they've been on birth control maybe since they were a teenager for things such as acne or painful periods, and now they're learning more and more and becoming aware of the side effects of birth control as well. And that is a common thing that women wonder, like, am I ovulating and will I be
Mhm.
able to have children and have I messed my body up? Would you suggest something like this for those women?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you know, it's instead of wondering and worrying, you can just have the information. And it's possible that you aren't ovulating and that there are things that need to be worked on, but then you have the knowledge and the steps to follow the path. And if you are, then you have evidence, right? You
Hmm.
have evidence that your body is working. And even if you're not ovulating, your body is still working. It's working the best it can under the circumstances it's given. But there's just so much information you can get off of a chart, and there's so much, I think there's just so much mystery around the menstrual cycle, especially when it's been masked with hormonal contraceptives for so long. And
Hmm.
so it's really a way of just like getting to know your body
Hmm.
again.
How long do you recommend someone wait after they stop birth control to start tracking?
You can start tracking right away. I've even heard of people like start to track just to make sure that they have everything down before they come off of hormonal birth control. Um, It's recommended if you're going to use the practice as like a contraceptive method that you wait at least 6 months for your
Okay.
body to really even out, and then at least 3 months of actually tracking before you use it for contraception. But if you're interested for health, or if you want to watch what your body does as it detoxes from all those synthetic hormones, you can absolutely start tracking right away. So I've worked with people who are like, all right, I want to plan to come off of hormonal birth control. I want to feel supported through this. And that's absolutely something that I have done for people. And yeah, I think it's really cool just to kind of watch your body return to its natural rhythms.
Hmm. Yeah, and I know that some of my clients have told me they got their period right away the first time, but then after that it was on stall or it just wasn't
Mhm.
regular again. So it can be really confusing if you don't
Yeah.
really know how to tap into that. That's
Mhm.
a great thing for you to help with for sure. What are
Yeah.
some of the challenges or misconceptions about fertility awareness?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is that it's confused with the rhythm method a lot. And it's because it's based on the same principles where you, like, on average, a woman can really only get pregnant for 6 days out of her cycle.
Okay.
Uh, and the rhythm method is just based off of everyone has a 28-day cycle, and these are the days where you can get pregnant, and this is when you can't. And it is just so easy for, if you just ovulate a day earlier or a day later than you think you're going to, even if you do have regular cycles, it's really easy to have an accidental pregnancy. And so it's kind of gotten a bad reputation just because of that. But this is it's different from the rhythm method in that you're using signs in real time that your body is giving you. So if you have cervical fluid present, that is what keeps sperm alive. That is what's indicating that your body is getting ready to ovulate, or at least try to ovulate. And so that's when you can get pregnant. And then basal body temperature is the best way outside of like an ultrasound, a really well-timed ultrasound, to tell that you actually have ovulated. So you're just getting all of this real-time information about your cycle, that is completely overlooked in something like the rhythm method or even some of the predictive apps like Natural Cycles or um, I know there's a couple others that will predict when you're fertile and when you're not. Um, so I think a challenge is just that it is a practice and it takes a lot of waking up at the same time every day to take your basal body temperature. And of course, I'm sure you know, that's actually really good for your circadian rhythm, but it's not
Sure.
something people generally like to do, especially if they like to, wake up early for work or whatever they want to sleep in on weekends. So that's a big challenge, is really just kind of incorporating it into your life. It really does become second nature after a while, but it can take a minute for that to happen.
Hmm. And so those two things are the two factors that you base it on. Are there any other things that you have people look at outside of the temperature and the fluid?
I mean, you can chart whatever it is that you want to track. I mean, personally, I track all my exercise and like how that might be influencing my cycle. I track travel, stress, ovulation pain, cramping, headaches, really anything that you consider a symptom of your menstrual cycle or you think might be a symptom of your menstrual cycle, like mood, breast tenderness, anything like that. Another actual fertile sign that's correlated with ovulation is your cervix position. So
Hmm.
if you wanted to reach all the way up into your vaginal canal and check for the position of your cervix, it gets higher around ovulation
Oh,
and it
wow.
also will feel softer. And then it'll drop down or kind of like it might feel kind of like tilted off to the side, just
Hmm.
depending on the position of your uterus. So that's a great one too. That's actually like really closely related to ovulation. But I think it's really great just to track everything that you feel interested in tracking, just because then you can start to see patterns and notice patterns. Um, and yeah, correlations and say like, oh, this is a symptom. Maybe my
Hmm.
migraines are happening around ovulation and this is a hormonal thing, or maybe they're not and I thought it was hormonal and it's just related to something else. Um, but yeah, I actually think like when you're talking about misconceptions, that's another big one is people will say like, "Oh, I have ovulation pain, so that must mean that I'm ovulating right now." And that's actually not been proven to be all of that related to the actual time you're ovulating. Like this last cycle, I think I had ovulation pain 6 days before I actually ovulated.
Wow.
Have to know what signs are the closest, like the most closely related to the timing of ovulation and what
Hmm.
aren't. Um, but yeah, you can track anything.
I love that. And I love having the log. I mean, I do that with my clients on other things, food, bowel movements, water intake,
Hmm.
because sometimes we think like, oh, it might have been that, but if you have it documented, you can quickly go back to the last couple months or
Mhm.
Just reference that is so important. And the things that you were talking about that I talk about with my clients in regard to all of this is stress is a huge one. How stressed were you? How did you manage stress? How were you with eating? We know that, some women just under eating, not eating enough, not eating good fats that are going to help them with the whole process. So those are some great tips as well to just use a log. Would someone use an app? Is there an app that you recommend for those type of activities?
Yeah, well, so for cycle tracking in particular, there's the Read Your Body app, and it's really customizable. That's what I use. So you can track basal body temperature and cervical fluid. You can really make it look like a paper chart, like how the instructor you're working with would really want to see it for it to be following the method. But then you can also add in things like bowel movements or water intake or exercise or stress level or mood or whatever it is that you might want to track. So if I was working with someone who was also working with a provider like you, we could collaborate and you can be like, okay, these are the things I want you to track. You can have it in this app and you can kind of see where it is located within the menstrual cycle.
Perfect. That is so helpful. Thank you for sharing that. What do you hope that people get out of their fertility awareness practice?
I mean, there's so much. I think when I think about what I've gotten out of it and the values that I bring into my work, I really hope that people can leave just feeling more grounded in their bodies and more educated. They'll have the language, they'll have the knowledge of the cycle to be able to advocate for themselves and their needs to their doctor or to their other providers or whoever it is. Because if you can't ask for it if you don't know what it is that you're asking for.
True.
Um, and so I really love helping people just feel empowered to advocate for themselves and to feel more connected to themselves. Because when you're doing something like taking time out of your day to check in with your body, and we recommend checking cervical fluid 3 times a day, just like when you're in the bathroom and you'd be there anyway. You can't help but just form a deeper connection with your body. And so I love seeing my both of my own journey with this and the people I work with, seeing them just build this compassion and this loving relationships with themselves.
Such good stuff. So someone coming to you, do they work with you one-on-one? Do you have a group program? Do you have some kind of self-guided course? How can they expect to learn with you?
So I right now I'm been being pretty flexible with how I work with people. I am happy to do group classes. That's kind of how I've been trained to teach, but I also do one-on-one. And so when someone reaches out to me, if I have other people who are interested in something similar, I might put together a group class or might say like, hey, if you have, 2 or 3 friends that are interested, this is what I can offer you at this price. And that kind of generally brings the cost down a little bit. But if someone feels like that's not what they need, or if they already have a charting practice and they just want to kind of deepen that, I can work with them one-on-one as well. And even if they do a group class, I usually kind of bundle in some individual time just because if you're going to learn how to chart, like your cycle is not going to look like the sample
Sure.
cycle chart that I'm teaching in class. So I want to have time with people one-on-one to go through their cycle charts and to address any concerns they have to make sure that they're really understanding how to work this into their lives and just kind of like get those logistics down.
Do you help beyond the tracking? So someone tracks with you and you might find that, I don't know, whatever patterns you see. Do you help beyond that with guidance or do you refer people out?
I do both. I'm in the role of educator, so I'm not, treating anything. I'm not qualified to treat anything. But if I see there are certain patterns I might see, or certain symptoms that people might want to address, and I can give some tips like, hey, you might want to look into this, way of supporting your liver detox estrogen a little bit better, or you might want to see if these dietary changes like healthy fat or whatever might improve the length of your luteal phase. And if those things aren't working, I refer out at that point. And that's just such a huge part of what I do. That's how I came across you too, is I love networking. I love having people to send clients I work with to because it takes a village. And, I know my limits and my the boundaries of the care I can provide. And so I want to be able to refer out to people who can go a little more in depth.
I think it's great that you have the general knowledge though, because if you're working with someone on tracking, they're gonna naturally wonder what can I do? And in my practice, as you know, I do functional labs for people who have tried the foundational things, but we can really move the needle with a lot of those foundational things that you can talk about in general when we talk about, are you over exercising? Are you under eating? Are you eating enough healthy fat? How are you managing stress? I think it's wonderful that you're not just leaving people with, well, here's your chart, and now you know
Right.
whether you're ovulating or not, because that can be
Yeah.
frustrating for people. And you're building this wonderful relationship with your clients that if they're comfortable with you, it's nice to know that you are supporting them in a general sense. And if someone has concerns and it's still not shifting, there may be some, what we call hidden stresses where someone might need a Dutch hormone test, and
Right.
they can
Right.
come and check in with me, or a gut test to see what's going on there. But there are so
Yeah.
many hidden stresses that we can't see, but the foundational things really can help to move the needle, and you'll be able to see
Yeah.
that through the tracking that you
Yeah.
learn with Julie, for sure.
Yeah, and I think the other thing about that is like sometimes it can guide the testing you do. So you might know, hey, I have a short luteal phase. Maybe I need to get my progesterone tested.
Hmm.
Um, so I can't say like you have low progesterone, but I can say you have signs of low progesterone. So why don't you look into that? Or we can assume that that's happening. So why don't you just see if these things will help? And so there is some testing that can kind of be like, um, either you can optimize your testing, you can really target it better because you have this picture of the cycle, or you can kind of make some educated guesses.
Yes, for sure. Well, I'm so grateful that I came across you through the Boston Business Women's group, our lovely
Great.
networking group, because we do need all the people in our toolbox possible. This is not something that I offer. And I don't feel like there are a lot of people out there in this little area that you're working either. So I think it's wonderful. And I'm happy to refer people to you. Where can people find you on social media or email, or do you have a website?
Yeah, my website is therapywithjuliallc.com. I'm on Instagram, and that's, I think, julie.lipsit.fae. But I can send all this to you if you have like a link for people, because I know that can be hard to look up. But yeah, no, I'd be happy to connect with anybody on either of those places.
Wonderful. So we'll put all of that under the show notes. If anyone needs to access, you can scroll under the podcast and you'll see all of Julie's links there. It has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing today.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Confidently Balancing Your Hormones. If you enjoyed today's episode, I'd love for you to share it with a friend and also hit follow at the top of this podcast. If you have a couple of minutes and you can leave a quick review, it will help other women in need find this podcast. You can find me on Instagram at confidently_love_yourself. I would love to stay connected and hear from you.